Maybe this hits closer than you expected. You didn't click this because you're bored. You clicked because something inside you has been tightening lately. A pressure. Not loud. Just constant. If this is you, you already know the pattern. You replay conversations in your head at night, not the big fights. The small ones. The pauses. The way she'd sigh before answering, like you were already wrong. The way you'd explain yourself a little too much. Laugh things off you didn't find funny. Agree just to keep the peace. You told yourself that's what love looks like. Compromise, patience, understanding. But deep down, something felt off, because somehow every argument ended with you apologizing. Every boundary turned into a negotiation. Every, "I'm not okay with this," slowly became, "Maybe I'm overreacting." And you hated that part of yourself, the part that knew, but stayed quiet. At 3 a.m., lying on your side, phone face down, room dark, you'd feel it hit. That dull realization that maybe you weren't losing your mind. Maybe you were just losing yourself. You remember the exact moments, don't you? The way she'd pull back affection when you didn't comply. The sudden coldness after you said no. The way her tone changed when she sensed you standing your ground. Just slightly, enough to make you question yourself. And then the guilt came, heavy, sticky. What if I'm being selfish? What if this is just how relationships work? What if I mess this up and lose her? So you adjusted, softened, bent, and every time you did, she relaxed. Because control doesn't need force, it only needs compliance. Maybe you never called it manipulation. You probably called it love, or communication issues, or bad timing. But your body knew. Your chest tightened before certain conversations. Your jaw clenched when you wanted to speak but didn't. You started choosing words carefully, not to be honest, but to avoid consequences. If this is you, you felt that quiet resentment grow, not explosive, just there, a low hum. You became more distant, but not freer, more silent, but not calmer. And the worst part, you still cared. You cared enough to doubt yourself, enough to stay longer than you should have, enough to hope that if you just explained things better, loved harder, stayed patient, she'd finally see you. But here's the part you don't say out loud. The moment you started pulling back emotionally, even a little, the moment you stopped chasing reassurance, stopped reacting the way she expected, something shifted. You felt it before you understood it, her confusion, her sudden questions, her need to re-establish something she could feel slipping. And that scared you. Because it meant one thing you weren't ready to face yet, that the version of you she was most comfortable with was the one who didn't challenge her power. So now you're here, not angry, not bitter, just awake, wondering when you became the man who hesitates before trusting his own instincts, wondering how long you've been negotiating your worth, wondering what would happen if you stopped explaining yourself altogether. So let me ask you something, and don't answer it quickly. If the moment you stopped being easy to control is the moment everything changed, what does that say about the relationship you were trying so hard to save? Sit with me for a minute. Just quiet. No music, no distractions. Just this. Most guys get it wrong. They see manipulation like a villain jumping out with a mask. Loud, obvious, easy to point at. But it's never like that. It's softer, smaller, sneaky, like a weight you didn't notice at first, and you carry it slowly until it's shaping the way you move, the way you speak, the way you even breathe around her. I remember a friend of mine. He was trying to be a good boyfriend, always apologizing first, always explaining, always softening his words. One night he came home from work, tired as hell. He just wanted to sit, watch the TV, do nothing. And she started in little jabs, not loud, just, "I thought you said you'd do X." The tone, sharp but casual, nothing dramatic. And he explained himself for 20 minutes. By the end, he was exhausted, and she was fine, smiling, like she hadn't even noticed. That's manipulation, not the yelling, not the grand gestures, the quiet pressure, the push that makes you question yourself. Here's the truth most men miss. It's never about winning, or losing, or even proving a point. It's about control. And once you realize that, you stop playing the game. I see it with a lot of guys. They think being strong means yelling back, or standing rigid waiting for her to submit, that's not strength. That's reaction. That's still letting her set the rules. Real strength is quieter, harder to notice, harder to fake. It's sitting in your own skin, calm, unshaken, even when she's trying to pull at you. Here's a principle most men overlook: boundaries are not negotiations. You don't need to explain them. You don't need to justify them. You just enforce them. And that's terrifying for someone used to bending you. Another one: your value isn't her validation. You can care, you can love, but her approval does not make you worthy. Never has, never will. I remember another moment, sitting at a diner late at night, rain tapping the windows. He told me about a fight he had just hours before. He said he felt guilty for standing firm, for saying no. I leaned back. I told him, the discomfort you're feeling, that's growth, that's freedom knocking. It doesn't feel good yet because you're used to submission. But that's not weakness, that's life showing you the path. It's human. You're human. You get scared. You get doubt. You stumble. You say things you shouldn't. But the men who break free, who can't be manipulated, they get up every time, and they do it quietly, firmly, without announcing it. Some guys think it's about being stoic, hard, cold, but it's not. It's about being steady, present, clear. You notice the small things, but you don't let them shake you. You speak when it matters, and you hold silence when it's needed. You feel, but you don't bend. So maybe right now you're sitting there, thinking, that sounds impossible. I don't know if I can do it. Good, that's honesty. That's a start. Because the second you stop being easy to move, everything shifts. Not because you changed her, not because you're trying to dominate, but because you finally stopped giving her power over your decisions, over your energy, over your peace. And that's a man, not loud, not flashy, not over-explaining, just grounded. So ask yourself this when the pull comes, when the familiar guilt hits, when your instincts scream, back off, and your old habits whisper, apologize again, which side will you choose? The one that bends, or the one that finally stands still? He's leaning against the kitchen counter, hands deep in his pockets, staring at the mug in front of him. Steam curls up and hits his nose. Smells like coffee, but bitter, like every morning lately. He doesn't touch it. Can't. Too many mornings like this. Too many mornings where he's thinking the same thing. How did I get here again? The apartment is quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. A lonely sound. He knows she'll be awake soon, probably already awake somewhere else. The thought doesn't hurt yet. Not really. Just a dull awareness. He remembers last night, the way she leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, smirk half hidden, eyes like she was waiting for him to stumble. And he did, every single time. Until yesterday, that is. He can still hear the words he didn't say echoing inside him. Not loud, just insistent. No, not like this, I'm not bending. He said it softly, almost surprised himself. The pause after, though, he'll never forget it. The room shifted, the air itself felt different. Heavy, type expectant. And then silence. Silence is heavier than any argument. He thought about explaining, but stopped. Something inside him, something raw and unshakable, said just hold it. Hold yourself. Let her see you steady. And he did. The memory makes his jaw ache. Old habits die hard. He catches himself replaying her face, the faint irritation when he finally stood firm. She blinked, paused, then looked away. That moment, so small, almost meaningless to anyone else, felt huge. Like he'd crossed some invisible line he didn't even know existed. And then the guilt comes. Quick, sharp. Am I being too hard? Too cold? His chest tightens, but beneath it, a strange calm, something unfamiliar. Like finally, he's holding his own weight. The fridge hums again. He taps the counter, restless, fingers jittering. He thinks about all the other mornings, the words he swallowed, the apologies that weren't his, the little compromises that, over time, became chains. He remembers a rainy night not long ago, rain tapping against the window. She asked him to do something he didn't want to, and he did anyway. Sat in the car afterward, wet coat clinging, heart thudding, thinking, why do I always give in? That night, he promised himself he wouldn't, not again. Now he knows he means it, really means it. The difference is small, almost invisible, but it's there. A line drawn quietly, A breath held, a stance taken without a word. The apartment feels colder now, or maybe that's just him. Hands unclench, shoulders roll back. He glances at his phone. No messages, no alerts. Not that he's waiting. Not anymore. He thinks about the time she tried to pull him back in, little nudges, soft tones, charm hidden behind patience. He used to fall for it every time. Used to twist himself into corners, apologizing for things that weren't his fault. For things he didn't even understand. But yesterday, he didn't. He remembers the sound of her voice, half frustrated, half surprised when he stayed quiet. The way she shifted in her chair, leaning forward, weighing him. He didn't move, didn't explain, didn't justify, just stayed. And for the first time, he noticed something else. A flicker of uncertainty, a crack in the rhythm she always relied on. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. The kettle whistles now. Sharp. He doesn't move. Just lets it ring. The steam curls in lazy spirals. The room smells faintly of metal and water. A momentary warmth fleeting. He lets the silence stretch. Memories hit. Tiny ones. The way she used to tease him. A soft jab that somehow left him uneasy. The way he'd laugh even though it stung. The nights he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is it me? Am I overreacting? And the mornings of apologies muttered under the breath, like confessions to the wrong God. Not anymore. He feels it deep in his chest now. Something steady. Something like himself again. Not the version she could twist. Not the version who danced to keep peace. Not the version who woke up tired of being tired. He breathes, slow, quiet. For the first time in months, maybe years, he feels the weight lift just a little. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough to know the difference. And then he asks himself softly, in that still room, with the rain and the kettle and the steam curling in his face, if I can't be moved, if I finally stand my ground, what does that leave her, and what does it leave me? Most guys think they're supposed to fix everything, every misunderstanding, every quiet tension, every flicker of frustration in her eyes. And when they can't, they feel like they failed. I had a friend once, late at night, rain against the windows, telling me he stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours because she was upset. He was exhausted, drained, almost shaking from it. And he said quietly, I can't just let her be mad. The truth. That belief is a trap. She didn't ghost you. You disappeared from yourself. It's not about abandoning her feelings. It's about holding your own. That's where the line is. The boundary that makes you unmovable. Another thing guys believe, if she pushes back, it means she doesn't love you. Small arguments, subtle tension, a sigh here, a pause there. It's easy to misread those. I remember one morning, coffee cold in my mug, watching my friend scroll his phone. She'd texted, short sentences. He panicked. She's upset. I must have done something wrong. And you know what? Nothing was wrong. He just started saying no to small things, asserting himself in tiny ways, and it freaked her out, not because she didn't care, but because she'd gotten used to control. You don't lose her, you lose your own presence. It's that quiet drift of self you didn't notice, the compromise that wasn't mutual, the words you swallowed thinking it was love, and the third belief, the one that hits the hardest attention, is love. Most men think showing up, explaining more, apologizing faster, bending first, that's love. That's not love. That's currency. And attention is cheap. Respect is priceless. I remember walking with a buddy once, late at night, city lights and puddles on the street. He kept checking his phone, anxious. I want her to notice me. I stopped him, looked him in the eye. She'll notice you when you stop being easy to notice, when you stop proving yourself every second. When you finally show that some things you don't negotiate. It hit him like cold water, because it wasn't about her at all. It was about reclaiming himself. These beliefs don't collapse with logic. They fall when you feel the difference between bending and standing, between disappearing and existing, between giving attention and commanding respect without words. You'll notice it first in tiny moments. A pause before you reply, a breath before you explain, a glance that doesn't chase approval. Your chest doesn't tighten, your stomach doesn't twist. That's the proof. That's your boundary. And once you feel it, once you taste that calm, the old rules start to fade. The compulsion to fix, the need to please, the silent assumption that her reaction defines your worth. It's slow, uneven, messy. You'll stumble, you'll question yourself, but every time you choose your presence over her pull, that boundary strengthens. The whispers of doubt fade just a little until you realize you don't have to fight her. You don't have to argue. You just have to be unshakable. And that changes everything. This is what he understands. Most men don't. They think power is loud. They think being unmovable means raising your voice, proving a point, forcing respect. That's noise. The 1% headman knows something quieter, something heavier. He knows that presence beats pressure. Every single time. Not words, not displays, not trying to make someone feel small. Just being steady in himself. That's enough. More than enough. I remember a guy I knew. She tested him in small ways, little jabs, questions meant to provoke. Most men would react, panic, explain, chase. He didn't. He let the moment hang, just breathed, watched, waited. She shifted first, confused by his stillness. That pause, that's where the power lies. This is how he leads, with presence. Not pressure. He shows up in his energy. Calm, not calculating. Warm, not desperate. Firm, not rigid. The room bends around him, not because he demands it, but because he can't be moved by petty games. He understands that boundaries are invisible until enforced. You don't have to announce them. You don't have to justify them. You just exist inside them. And when someone tries to cross them, your response is measured, clear, almost effortless. Moments like this define him. When she's upset, he doesn't chase reassurance. He doesn't react to tone. He doesn't panic. He notices the little signs, the hesitation, the shift in gaze, the way words falter, and lets it be. That patience, that's strength, that's control. That's the 1% mindset. He doesn't need to dominate, doesn't need to win. He just holds himself, even when his heart races, even when he wants to speak, to justify, to fix. He waits, watches, listens, and acts from clarity, not fear. Sometimes it's small, like letting a text sit unread for a few hours, letting her question hang without jumping to answer, holding silence without feeling desperate, letting the tension in the room exist while he doesn't bend. Other times it's huge, saying no to things he's been trained to do, things he's done 1,000 times before just to keep peace, speaking truth when it's inconvenient, walking away from arguments that aren't worth the energy, choosing his presence over her reaction. He knows his worth isn't measured by her mood, or her attention, or her approval. He's already accounted for that. That's why he's calm when most men are shaking. That's why he can sit quietly while others explain themselves, apologize, chase. And the magic, the quiet, terrifying magic, is that when he stops being easy to move, when he stops bending, something shifts. She notices, she respects, she hesitates. And it's not about power over her. It's about power inside him. This is what he understands that most men overlook. Control isn't taking. Control is holding. Respect isn't begged for. It's felt. Presence isn't loud. It's unshakable. And every choice, every small act of patience, every refusal to chase builds him slowly, unevenly, messily. Real human growth. By the time most men are panicking, apologizing, trying to make her like them again, the 1% headman is already standing steady inside himself, unmoved, already seeing clearly what the others can't yet feel, already living his life on his terms. And that is the kind of man she can't manipulate. He's sitting on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. Room smells like last night's rain. The city hums outside, soft, persistent. Flashes hit him. The way he explained himself for hours, the way he laughed when it stung, the way he bent, twisted, apologized for things that weren't his. A memory sparks, coffee cold on the counter, her eyes on him, expecting, waiting. He wanted to melt into her approval. He didn't. Whispered himself, "I'm done." The weight hits, hard, chest tight, jaw clenched. All the tiny betrayals he accepted, the quiet surrender they break against something inside him now. A line drawn, not loud, not announced, just felt. He remembers standing still while she shifted, confused by his calm. That moment, that pause, that clarity, heart racing, hands shaking. He laughs low, uneven, real, not relief, not victory, just recognition. He's not hers to move anymore, never was. He remembers the worth he forgot he carried, the life he paused for someone else. And in that quiet room, with rain tapping, the air thick and cold, he finally feels it. Unshakable, the rain taps the window cold. Relentless, he sits chest tight, hands unclenching, eyes on nothing and everything at once. All the apologies he swallowed, the compromises that weren't his, the quiet surrender, gone. He remembers every pause, every hesitation, every moment he bent to her expectations. And now still, unshaken, present. The tension in the air doesn't scare him. Her doubt, her questions, her games, they skim off him like water. The room smells faintly of coffee and rain. He breathes it in, and he knows. The man she can't move was inside him all along.